Alright, you guys know this series by now. I spend my week digging through the internet looking for weird things to show you, and sometimes they're weird for you guys and me, and sometimes it's just me, quite frankly. Today, well, we're gonna look at Sega again, and I know they aren't, well, as well known as some of the others for odd devices and unique devices. However, in the scheme of oddities, this one's both less useful and somehow more useful than the average oddity that we run across on this channel. Because today we're going to talk about the Sega MegaJet. Not nearly as clever a name as it may first seem on the surface, so stick around for a while as we go into this little oddity, how it worked, and what it was for, and why it didn't make as good a splash as what it may have influenced in today's gaming oddities. Now, the 80s and 90s were kind of a big time, not only for the gaming industry but for handhelds. The technology had simply come a very long way from something like the Game & Watch, Tiger handhelds, and the Mattel Microvision. We now had consoles with hours of use that could take on more advanced and smaller carts, introducing us all to gaming on the go like we had absolutely never seen before. Everyone was looking to advance this technology with different add-ons and new devices, not the least of which was Sega with their Game Gear, taking handhelds into the era of color alongside the Atari Lynx. But Sega had bigger aspirations. They wanted a way to get you using their popular Mega Drive/Genesis console on the go. And I know what you're thinking. Of course they did, that's why they made the Nomad. And you're not wrong, but before there was the Nomad, there was the Sega MegaJet. I know what you're asking, why haven't I heard of this thing if this thing came out before the Nomad and did everything it did, and if so, why was there a Nomad in the first place? Well, okay, to answer that question, we actually have to go back to the year 1993, or 1994, depending on the source you look at, when this device was first released, and more specifically, Japan. Yeah, it's another one of those again. Sega got the idea to get their Mega Drive games into the airline flights. To that end, they actually came out with a handheld version of the self-same console, basing it on the design of their 6-button controller. This was a fairly wide system that allowed you to plug in full-sized Mega Drive carts into the system. However, unlike the Nomad, this console had no screen. You would instead have to connect it to the TV on the chair in front of you and use the console that way. What's the big deal, you say? You carry it with you, you plug it in where there's a plug wherever you want to go or stay or whatever, and it's still easier to take around than the original system, right? And I would agree with you if that were the case. However, the system had a few issues. You see, this console used two 9-volt batteries which would run down in only 2 hours, and the unit, as far as I can tell, had no way of plugging into any kind of power supply. The other issue was the limited availability of this particular console. Sega, for some reason, decided to keep the sale of the console to airports. Yeah, airports, specifically in Tokyo and Osaka, making it difficult for anyone outside of those areas to actually get a hold of one of the units. Advertising was also scarce on the unit. Basically, if you weren't in an airport in these areas, you likely would never know that these things existed outside of word of mouth. It was also a fairly expensive system, costing around 30,000 yen or $300 US, which is more than the cost of Mega Drive with games. The last issue on top of these was the fact that the console was limited to 15 minutes of playtime per flight per the FAA. The upside is you could often rent cartridges on the flight, so you didn't actually have to carry all your cartridges on the flight in order to be able to play the thing. In the end though, regardless of its flexibility, the unit was kinda short-lived. However, it did give rise to the Nomad itself that would finally deliver on the promise of fully mobile gaming for your Genesis. But it too would also suffer from the same battery life, having only 2 hours of battery life for a whopping 6 AA batteries. But it still tops out as one of the more advanced handhelds for its era until the Game Boy Advance released in run around 2001, bringing 32-bit gaming to the handheld world at large. However, what do you guys think of this one? Did any of you ever see or play one of these in the wild? Would any of you like to have one as a collector's item? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, please leave this video a like. If you haven't, consider following the channel. That helps me out a ton. Until next time though, thank you once again for making it this far in the video, and until we meet again, happy gaming!